Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of No Hold Time. We are still on the road. Our last episodes were recorded in San Diego, and now we are in very warm and sunny Las Vegas, Nevada. Thanks for being back. You'll see that this will be our first episode with 4 people. We're really excited because our 2 guests are amazing. You might recognize this guy, Grant Riewe, back by popular demand. And a new amazing guest and partner, Gordon Rubin, also from Vibrant Emotional Health. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And, my friend.
I'm still here.
Yeah, still here.
I get to join Grant's podcast this time. You guys kicked me out last time.
Oh, I forgot about that. You were voted off the island for that episode, but you've earned your way back in.
It's our first 4-person episode, too.
Yeah.
So we'll see if the microphones work well.
All right.
Jake, that's on you.
Jake, make it happen. Gordon, I'm going to start with you. What we like to do on this podcast is get to know people, understand their whys, and just learn a little bit about them before we get into the amazing things that we do with them. In your case, all of the fun and very important things we do with you and Grant and your teams at Vibrant Emotional Health. The one thing I couldn't ask you about, because I'm big with music, and Grant, we talked a lot about his musical prowess, is I've heard that you come from a family of musicians and have your family's done really nice things in New York. So just can you tell us a little bit about, what music instruments you play, and then, give us a little history on your family and music.
Sure, okay, I see where you went with that.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know each other through the important work that we're doing with Mosaicx and Vibrant Emotional Health, and my role there in engineering at Vibrant. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I come from a background of musicians. Both of my parents were professional musicians, uncles and aunts. Great uncle of mine was in the Ellington Orchestra for 30 years and played bass saxophone with Fletcher Henderson's band. It's on 78 records. I was introduced to musical instruments as a child. I started playing Suzuki violin and recorders, 5-6 years old. Flute, clarinet, saxophone. Continued playing flute and saxophone up through college and afterwards, and worked professionally as a saxophonist for a while. Bass is an instrument I picked up later in life and gigged a little bit on. I have passion for recording, and early in my career after grad school for acoustics, I opened up a professional recording studio. Did a bunch of post-production work, recording rock bands, doing my own studio work out of that same facility with a partner. Had a lot of fun operating that place. And at this point, I'm on a little bit of a musical hiatus. I've transitioned my hobby activities to a non-musical arena. It's an automotive now. But yeah, that's my music.
How did you make that jump? Just like cars one day?
It's funny, I wasn't into cars at all when I was a kid. I learned to drive when I was 19 years old or something. And yeah, it came up later in life. I think actually it was while I was working on automotive apps and getting into automotive integration from an infotainment standpoint, working on radio apps, which I did for a little while in the middle of my career. And at that point, started getting into the automotive engineering complexity that's involved there. I kind of was drawn to it. Revisited it about 5 years ago.
Well, that was a good question, because my next question was going to be about your work with infotainment stuff, which is really something that I care a lot about. We've talked about this on the podcast. I listen to music all day long whenever I'm not in meetings with you guys. Tell us a little bit about your work there.
It's funny because when infotainment systems really started getting advanced, and you could sync your phone up to them in a way that wasn't completely awkward and distracted you from driving or anything, people had this question in their mind, like, is this actually going to drive the sale of automobiles? Are people going to make a decision on a car based on whether it can connect to their phone, right? There was a doubt about that. Yes, they did. They definitely do. It's like one of the number one drivers.
Yeah.
This isn't such a surprise. The terrestrial radio, one of the places that people definitely listen to terrestrial radio is in the vehicle. I had the opportunity to work to introduce iHeartMedia as a brand in North America, and I ran all of their automotive integration programs and developed apps for all the OEMs that sell in the US, and through that work, worked with Android Auto and with Apple CarPlay. And
you just took me back to the days of me sitting in my car with the CD Walkman mounted in the middle, plugged into a cassette tape into the bad radio that I had, and trying to make sure I didn't hit enough bumps to stop skipping my CD. Sorry, I just
that was
complete
robust
flashback
technology right there.
Complete flashback.
Yeah, I agree. So my in-law lived in Wilmington whenever my wife and I met, and so we would come to North Carolina a lot. And I was allowed to keep one bag of things that I didn't have to travel back and forth with. That's one of the things I had in that bag is I wasn't hooked up to a Walkman anymore. I was hooked up to my phone, but it was the little plug that went into the cassette deck in my mother-in-law's car in North Carolina.
Gordon, I want to take a step back. I'd love to know about your role at Vibrant. How'd you end up there? Like, what brought you to the group? Obviously, the story's amazing, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, my role at Vibrant, I'm the VP over platform engineering. So all of the technology teams that contribute to our service offerings in the marketplace work in platform engineering. And we work closely with our product management peers, with our peers in data architecture. Essentially, we're the ones responsible for the services and the services that we are developing for the next generation. It's really important work. There are folks who come from a background that's very close to clinical technologies and to the crisis care space. There are others that come from financial services in my group that come from a range of domains and backgrounds. We all share an awareness and appreciation for the importance of the mission. When we come together to work on something that's a high priority, step away with the sense that we've worked on something important. We didn't just help ensure that a bunch of pizzas were delivered or that vehicles were sold. Important business problems, not to take away from those domains in any respect, but there's a level of priority and mission on my team that's unique in the technology space, and that's why I joined Vibrant a little less than a year ago.
Yeah, very cool. And Grant, probably need to acknowledge that besides your amazing fans that follow all of your podcast pieces, they may not have watched our podcasts in a row. Do you want to just explain a little bit about Vibrant and the missions?
Sure.
Thanks.
Vibrant Emotional Health is a nonprofit. We are in the mental, emotional, behavioral health space. We've been around for 55 years. The big thing that we talk about and that we do together is around 988, which is the Suicide Crisis Lifeline, sponsored by the federal government, in particular SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, which is part of Health and Human Services more broadly. 988 is the evolution of what used to be the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which was established in 2005. And so 988 itself launched in July of 2022. We serve, or will serve this year, around 7 million people. That is inclusive of folks who are veterans. We have a partnership under 988 with the Veterans Crisis Line. So veterans will call 988 and press 1 and come into VCL and VHA services. We also have some national partnerships to offer Spanish language services, LGBTQIA plus services in the state of Washington. We also do Native American specific culturally appropriate support, and then all of those calls come into the state where that help seeker is. So that's the biggest thing that Vibrant does. There are calls, there are chats, there are texts, and we have video phone for the deaf and hard of hearing community as well. Vibrant also contains a crisis contact center called Here to Help. And so we are a part of the 988 network, and then we provide national backup services, but we also provide services to the state of New York and then the city of New York and the capital region of New York. And then we have partnerships with over a dozen other entities to provide various hotline or warm line services, all of which are around accessing mental, emotional, behavioral health care. And then the third thing that Vibrant does is we are active in the community. So we have partnerships with a broad array of entities, but providing in community care, predominantly in the 5 boroughs, New York, here, to give people access to healthcare. So that actually may include direct clinical care, or it might provide guidance to other services here. When we think about the spectrum that we provide, it's not just about individuals who are in crisis, who are thinking about suicide. It's also for all of the precursor indicative situations that an individual might find themselves in: housing distress, financial distress, domestic abuse. And so we provide services across the spectrum.
Thanks.
What are you excited about that might be coming, that your team is working on? Anything that is coming that could be a big game changer or a big upgrade to the network?
The biggest thing that's coming this year is around georouting. And that is our ability to better identify where a help seeker is so that we can better route that interaction, in this case a call, to community-based support. So for me to tell you how big that is, I have to step back and say 988, while it sounds like 911, is a very different service. 911 started in 1968 and has decades and decades of support behind it to provide a on-demand, in your space, where you are, emergency service. And to that end, they need to know physically where you are to provide that service. 988 generally doesn't need to know where you are with precision. Here, we would love to know what county you're in, maybe within a couple of miles of where you are, but for the most part, we don't need to know specifically where you are. And as a consequence, 988 has never had access to that geolocation information that 911 does. We have a partnership with 911 services. So when someone who is in need contacts 988, and we do need to do a mobile crisis team dispatch or engage with other forms of emergency services, we'll call in to what's called a PSAP, a public safety access point, and share the information for that help seeker under clinical guidance where appropriate, so that we can dispatch help to the individual. Georouting is not that.
Mm-hmm.
Georouting is essentially augmenting the information that we get from a caller that says generally where they're at. And so think about this as really knowing the county in which you're in at that moment, making the call to 988, and we're going to use that county to identify the closest crisis center to you, and then we can take that call and send it to that crisis center as a first choice, or within that state as the state structures that dictate. This is a huge, huge effort. It sounds simple, but the mechanics are very much not simple.
Yeah.
And it's required the coordination of SAMHSA as our funding and oversight partner, the FCC as our regulatory partner, partnership with the major carriers here in the United States, partnership with you, of course, Mosaicx, to provide us that mechanics so that we can do the routing solution, and then all of the crisis centers that are in the United States as well.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like it would be a big, you use the right word, augment to improve the routing and route people more efficiently. We're excited. I think we started talking about the possibility of something like this like 2 years ago. And so for us to be in process to working on it is really exciting. And Gordon's played a huge role in that. So thank you for your partnership and help. Anything you want to add to that as you're, I know, like in and out of it all day long?
You're talking about geo-routing, not geo-tracking, right?
Yeah, geo-routing.
Because the geo-tracker, that's a 3-cylinder vehicle, right? It's not what we're doing.
Tracker.
So, I mean, I feel like at this point, interacting with digital channels and the utility that you get from sharing your location is such a widely known paradigm for non-voice call channels, right? Unless you're on the phone, being prompted or seeing an indicator that your location is being shared, that's expected. When there's utility there, users will easily provide that. Some help seekers would volunteer that tracking location if we were going that far and doing that. And to be clear, we are not. That's not the space that we're in at this point. But I would like to explore further and see where a user would voluntarily provide their location in the help that they would be reducing harm to themselves or to a family member in crisis. And I think that's largely unexplored territory at this stage. But hopefully it's in the roadmap years to come.
Maybe something to add on what we're talking about in terms of privacy, because you talked rightly so that when you're on your iPhone, it'll pop up with the little indicator that you're sharing your GPS location, or Android has a similar thing. For what 988 is doing, we are keeping that location information secure. So the help seeker will call in. We don't necessarily take that information and present that to anyone else. It's just in the system to get that call to the best counselor, the closest counselor. That counselor can't see that information, the precision of that information, right? And we don't store the precision of that information, right? Except in the event that we would need to route a call, then we would have access to it. That again, the counselor wouldn't necessarily have access to that. So we're trying to balance what Gordon's talking about here is the broadly accepted, of course you know where I am, with the reality that there are a lot of people that also don't want us to know where they are, except in a specific circumstance. And so we're going to always bias for data privacy here. And we do informed consent to get that disclosure from the help seeker to say, well, if you need us to know where you are, great, we can know where you are. But if we don't need to know, then we can't keep that information.
And just to make sure I cover it, is the true problem the number portability issue, where today if I call an 800 number or anyone, my 402 area code says I'm from Omaha, but I could be living in Las Vegas, for example, right? Is that the true genesis of the problem that you're solving with this?
Well, we could pin it on number portability, but really it's the rise of mobile phones and the shift away from landlines here. So that's number one. And the movement of the U.S. population. So there's a lot of movement. If you look at the 2020 census, you can see that inside the U.S. borders, you see something close to 30% of the population kind of moving towards the coastal regions, or at least large urban regions. So that's where number portability shows up, is we see a lot of people moving around. But even today, the four of us are in Las Vegas, and none of us live here. So we're traveling. Now, if any of us are in need of help and we pick up a phone and call, it's not going to be routed to the crisis center that's here in Las Vegas. It's going to be routed to the one where our phones are registered. And so that's really the problem, is that wherever you're at any point in time, how do we access that information? I think the second thing is where we have added GPS, as Gordon mentioned before. Most of those, geolocation augmented solutions are coming through an application platform. And we're operating on the legacy telephony platform. And so we have to actually step into a set of technologies that were never designed to provide this kind of data, because we want to provide it to everyone, not just to someone who has an app.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that was a good clarifying question. So, Grant, I think we're almost on 2 years since we launched 988. How are things going? How do you feel 2 years into it?
I think things are going great. How can I say that? The need for the channel grows by the day. That is good and bad here. But just last month, we passed a major milestone on the number of interactions here that have been routed by the platform, which is 10 million here. And I say that in the context of the time that we're recording this conversation today. By the time we're live, we may be in the 10 million answered since the launch of the channel here. And that just says the reach that 988 has. We've had major expansions to the platform. I touched on several of those: the LGBTQ subservice, video phone. Secretary Becerra, who's the Secretary of HHS, is proud, and rightly so, of the Spanish language support we've got. I know that's near and dear to your heart, David, and having that as a voice channel and a chat and text channel. So things are going very well. A lot of partnership that we're getting from states, a lot of partnership that we're getting from centers, a lot of partnership that we're getting from private institutions that are recognizing the need to provide access to this type of services here. So it's a really exciting time to be involved with this service and launching it. It's not without its challenges by any means, and the things that we are providing are things that are sometimes hard to be excited about, right? When you look at more people calling, there's a way to frame that pessimistically as we have more people who are in need. But on the optimistic side, we have people who are always in need. More of them are reaching out. More of them are receiving help. And so those who would have at worst, done themselves harm or were otherwise lost in their individual situation, more of them are getting help than ever before.
Yeah.
And that is the thing that we need to celebrate.
I agree. I think friends and colleagues have asked me that question, like, if numbers are growing, if volume is increasing, does that mean more people are in need of help? And I always just like to say is, I think more people are also becoming aware of the service. It's people that needed the help already now know that this amazing service is out there, and also more willing to reach out for help, which in my opinion is one of the hardest steps, is actually asking for help, right? And so congratulations on the milestone, and always like to say thank you for bringing us along, because it's one of the coolest things I've done in my professional career. So thanks for letting us be a partner.
I was pretty proud of my wife works at the school, the elementary school, public school in Omaha. And on the back of all of their IDs, it says text 988 for help. I was on there, turned it around and went, oh, that's really awesome. So you're right. I think it is a lot of awareness. Yeah. And that speaks to what you guys have done from a marketing piece. So Geo was amazing. Coming soon. Well, the question is, what's next? Where's your focus at? Is it people? Is it technology? Is it process?
Or can you tell us about it?
Yeah,
it's possible that the answer
is secret sauce.
We can't share that with you yet. I'll give you that out if you want it.
Well, I'm not going to take that out. I'm not going to thank you, but I'm not in such danger that I need your escape hatch yet. A couple of thoughts. We're reaching more people through Spanish language support. There's a lot of people in the U.S. who English is still not their primary language, right? And I say still not, maybe that's the wrong phrasing, but it isn't their primary language. And we would like to offer them services. And we have a translation service that's part of 90-Day, which offers support in another 70 languages.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the same as interacting with somebody
Native.
who is native and speaks in your language. So what can we do there to provide broader support from a language dimension?
Yeah, I mean, I actually was just having a conversation with Lauren in our meeting space this morning, and they have that same thing. They're in a totally different industry. They're in banking, and that is an area where they feel they need to grow. It's not just people who also speak Spanish, it's people that speak it natively. And so her approach is starting contact centers, in your case it'd be counselors and counseling centers in areas where Spanish is the dominant language, right? I grew up in South Texas, and 90% of the people spoke Spanish. You could live your whole life in the 956 area code and not ever have to speak English unless you went to school or something. But that'd be something I would think is looking in areas where it's the most commonly spoken. But I think then your follow-up is going to be, then I'm only addressing people who are from Mexico and not people who speak Spanish that were raised in Puerto Rico or Nicaragua, whatever. So I think, it's a tough challenge. I don't envy your place.
Well, we've got some of those answers already, because our single largest Spanish-speaking center is Linea Paz in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And they handle some, I think, 40% of our total Spanish language volume. And then our larger centers after that are in Texas here. So there's some of that. But beyond Spanish, what is it that we need to do in providing that support? And we're working with SAMHSA and HHS to determine what is the path forward on language expansion, and need to be guided by our federal partners on what should be next there. The second thing that I would say is about channel expansion. So our most recent channel that we expanded to was video phone here, and we did that in September of 2023. But we're still not reaching lots of folks. So what are those channels? Your other customers that you may work with maybe do channel steering and channel consolidation.
Yeah.
We need to do the opposite of that, which is channel proliferation. So how do we do that in a sustainable way? Here, from a technical standpoint, right? We can open up an aperture and throw an API out there and take as much in as we want. That's Gordon's problem to solve as my engineering lead, right? I can say, yeah, it's all an API. Gordon's going like, man, you don't know what you're talking about. the benefits of being an executive. But how do we reach more people, right? Now, the third thing that we're talking about here is if we're reaching more people, we need more support. And so there's somewhere close to 9,000 crisis counselors. It's an actual certification here that members of our network achieve. And so that's about the body that we have in the United States. So you can imagine as we scale up beyond 10 million interactions, that we're going to need to scale up our crisis counselor volume. So that's a challenge for us to solve. And SAMHSA's taken that one head on with providing technical assistance and support and training to expand that crisis counselor network in the United States. But we have a human need issue for people to be able to support other people in the United States here. And then, of course, that complexifies with language, right, and channel. And the fourth thing that I would tell you that we're looking at is something that we've been doing is Vibrant and partnership with New York City for a long time is peer support. So not necessarily just talking to a crisis counselor, but talking to someone who has lived experience and engaging in whatever crisis you may have been experiencing. It's a different level of support. It's a different level of relationship, but that's something that we're looking at. What can we do here in the United States to do peer support more broadly than we have before?
So we're in Vegas this week for Contact Center Week. It's a very large event in our business. Everyone's got AI, everyone's got contact center. I would just love, this is no prep call, so this is live, real question here. When you come to something like this, I know AI is not always the forefront of your business. What would you guys look for in a big conference like this? What would maybe be on your agenda to just kind of peek at? Is it technology? Is it things that people are doing? Is it speakers? Just what would be up there?
I'd say I try to clear my mind of preconceived notions when I enter a floor like Customer Contact Week, where there's so many business domains represented. A lot of people in the space have strong opinions about directionality, what's offered now. I'm seeing more and more connections between the space that we're operating, Vibrant, and other private businesses, and seeing more similarity between the business processes in those other domains that have nothing to do with crisis counseling. So clearing my head, going with fresh eyes seems to be the best way to opportunity spot. If that makes sense.
Okay, cool. Well, you agree?
I'm looking to hear what's going on. Really not looking to receive a pitch here, but I am looking for people who are willing to, as Mosaicx says, get in the boat with us, right? That means, people who say, I've got a solution and it's going to solve your problem. Not those folks, but the people I've figured out a way to solve problems. Are there aspects of the way that I figured out how to solve this problem that would apply to what you do? Because we at Vibrant are kind of the opposite in the respect to many of our, contact center peers, right? We're not concerned about handle time. We're not supportive of self-service in a lot of ways. We want to get that call in to a human as fast as possible. So that's the inversion of a lot of the things that other contact centers would think about. And so that means that I'm looking for people who want to say, okay, I've got a solution, and I understand that if I actually just reflect it a little bit different way, it can get useful even for your scenario. So very similar to kind of what Gordon was saying, looking for people who can share ideas that we could apply to our version of doing business.
I would add on, there's another color to this, which is technologists, people working in other business domains can all relate to the person in crisis scenario. Most of which personally have some lived experience or a connection to a person that's had the worst day of their life, somewhat recently. There's a whole other avenue for us to connect with the professionals and solution architects in this space, who we often find are excited to collaborate and think about the problem space in a new way, in a way that's different than the manner they may be treating their other clients. So I just want to mention that color as well. It's great.
Yeah. To take us off of CCW a little, we started this segment, I guess, in a handful of podcasts ago, and it was asking one of our guests to share either a good or bad customer experience. You have one that you could share with us, Grant?
I sure do. Recently, I had the opportunity to take a vacation to Alaska, and I live in Minneapolis, and where I was going is in southeast Alaska, a city by the name of Sitka. There's no direct way for me to get there, so I've got to go Minneapolis to Seattle, and from Seattle I got to take a thing called a milk run, which is a multi-stop flight. So I go Seattle to Ketchikan to Sitka, and then that flight goes on to Juneau and then Anchorage. All right, so you kind of stay on the train, so to speak, until it's time to get off. But what I encountered in this trip is that I have to change airlines, and in some ways that's not a problem, right? Where airlines have partnership or reciprocity here. I was moving from Delta to Alaska Airlines, and there's no partnership there. So my customer experience was, I gotta check a bag, fly from Minneapolis to Seattle, exit security, claim my bag, go check it back in at another airline, and then go back through security, right? And so if anybody's, ever checked a bag and gone through security, which anybody who's ever been on a flight has done that. To do that on your layover and then hope you're going to make it, right? Because you're trying to book your layover for a minimum amount of time. I booked 2 hours. If my outbound flight hadn't been delayed, I absolutely would have missed that flight here. And so, just thinking about the experience that we've created for ourselves. And here, am I complaining about Delta or Alaska? No, neither one. What I'm complaining about is the FAA that doesn't have oversight to say that once you're in the security ecosystem for the airport, why would I ever have to leave it? Why isn't there a mandate to say, once you're in, you're in? Yeah. And we would say, doesn't matter what relationship the airlines have, there should be an overarching, policy that says you check your bag in for one airline, right? Like they can check it into every other airline and share that information, right? But instead, I, as the customer in that case, just it would have been worse if I'd missed the flight.
Yeah. Because when's the next flight for that milk run?
It was 6 hours later, so that would have been not my favorite layover. Seattle's a lovely town, great airport. I can get some good seafood. Yeah, not where I want to be. You want to get where you're going. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Gordon. My question for you is not a CX question. We're in Las Vegas. There's amazing food here, but when you're home in New York, what's your go-to pizza joint?
Oh, the pizza joint? All right, so people from Brooklyn, we have strong opinions about pizza, bagels. Used to be the case, we have a lot more pizza shops, and they're dwindling these days. My favorite pizza place is DeFara on Avenue J. It's become quite famous at this point. They have some little spin-off locations as well at this point.
Is it a big place, or is it just a window like Brooklyn, like New York tends to have?
This tiny place that's been around maybe 60 years, 70 years. I've heard stories about the health department closing it down decades ago, and
it just makes the pizza better.
Yeah,
a good story.
That's right.
What's your favorite topping?
Probably Italian sausage and basil.
All right. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Personally, eat your pizza the way you would like to eat your pizza.
That's a good middle ground right there. That's a good
individuals,
middle ground right there.
But for me, no.
Yes,
I like that.
Pineapple belongs on pizza, preferably with pickled jalapenos.
Oh, that's one I have not tried.
I always have jalapenos. Yeah.
Of course you would.
Yeah.
They are the freshest of the fruit.
That is my favorite fruit, a jalapeno. Second favorite, avocado. Well, guys, thank you for joining us. Anything that we didn't cover that you want to get out there in the world to the tens of our listeners? We really appreciate, I can't say this enough, what you do and your partnership, saving lives and helping people. Thank you so much. Anything we missed? Anything you want? Or
no, let's get out of here.
Okay. All right. Well, we really appreciate you coming on. Brian's our closer. I'll let us do his thing.
For all the podcasts, including the ones we've already done with Grant in the past, go to mosaicx.com/podcast. No S. Otherwise, YouTube, Spotify, subscribe, all that good stuff the kids say every day. So thanks for stopping by. We'll see you guys next time.
You guys are pros. Look at you guys. I hadn't seen you do the operation yet. The close is smooth.
Smoothish.
It's different every time.
Is it?
Yeah.